because I get something out of this, let's do the Wednesday Serial Monthly Roundup. I'm going to start with Judgment Day, also just Death to the Mutants, and another issue of Judgment Day. So we're at 5 on Judgment Day, Death to the Mutants 2, and 4 on Judgment Day, so I should put that in front. But also, there's this Avengers issue. It all just blends together, along with the Immortal X-Men issue, because it's written by the same guy, Kieran Gillian. And this has hit a problem that I've had with a lot of the big two lately. Um, I'm sure I've talked about it before, but the characters just kind of enter this nether space, and stuff happens, and all these characters are happening, things are happening, but it's not happening anywhere in particular. And that makes it really hard for me to lock in on the story. So I understand there's these things happening, there's these judgments happening, thumbs up, thumbs down, if you're okay or not, based on some arbitrary whatever with the Celestials. But I mean, where this is going doesn't really make sense because it's supposed to be this global consequences talked about in some small room in a back room that's not actually being broadcasted to anyone. I don't think it's the best told story. I don't think it's particularly tight. I think there's some interesting stuff in here, but it's okay. But it's kind of a hot mess. Next is Knights of X. This is apparently the last issue of this for a while. Thank goodness. It ends kind of just putting a bow on things, but it gave some resonance to where things were, and I'm kind of glad it's done. Legion of X has the end of arc 1, which was barely an arc. Again, I'm kind of glad we're done with this chunk of whatever. Um, I don't know. It's just some character moments or whatnot. This is a very skippable book. Marauders 6. I struggling to remember what happened, and I read this yesterday. They're wrapping up a little bit of what was going on after. It's like an epilogue to the first arc being tied into Judgment Day. It's like this issue that they have to serve before they go and do something on their own, which is a big problem with the X books right now. There's always like an event, and then the books have to kind of circle around that, but they also have their own stories. And it's just like there's too many things and no stories are being told cohesively. And so it's really hard to get momentum, especially when they're restarting books, shifting up casts, doing all these things, shifting creators. It's this like blobby moving target, and some of it's pretty all right, but some of it really needs to be reined in. I think they'd actually all be stronger if they cut out a couple books and were forced to make some harder choices about what they wanted to do and go with where they're at right now. Ironically, New Mutants has really turned things around. I really done something to bring new characters forward. I think the art changes helped this book immensely. Um, yeah, and I know there's a new character coming in that's going to be the focus for at least the next few issues, and I think that's good. The Deadpool mini here is supposed to lead into the new Deadpool book, but Deadpool just got into X Force, so I don't really know what's going on there. Um, Wolverine has been really interesting through this whole Judgment thing. The idea of what he's doing to circumvent a Judgment is get someone that he doesn't like necessarily to help him kill one of the celestial gods, and then he'll help that guy kill a demon. It's a good setup into what I imagine is going to be a better arc on the back end, but it's taking this event and building context for where we're going next. One of the few books to be doing so in this whole X-Men blob. So there's that. X-Force threw me off. I thought this was Forge. It's Craven. Cool. I should have remembered. He was set up in the last issue. And it says Craven right there too, but I just saw the cover and thought, X-Force Forge. This has actually been a really interesting setup. I know a lot of people don't like Percy that much, but I really think he's one of the stronger writers here. He's taking the time to set up characters, motivations. It's nothing so extraordinary, but he's at least covering some of the basics, setting being another major one. His books always seem to have a level of setting that isn't present in other books. but he also uses that setting at times to inform the action or the story of it, which is important and why that grounding is so important. It doesn't feel like something that should need to be said, but um, it is getting lost. I think Dugan's X-Men is a little stronger right now, mostly because he's sliding away from the politics and going more towards moralizing. Or if he is slipping into politics, like skipping ahead to X-Men Green or X-Men Unlimited, depending on how you're counting this book. There is a kind of a political idea, but the political idea is like we need to protect our planet, and there's someone going too extreme. They're an eco terrorist to do it, but like, what other choice do they have when no one's listening? Ultimately, the conflict doesn't rest on the politics as much as the moral side of things. And I think that moral conflict is where he plays better. He does not play well with political differences because he doesn't understand that there's an other side. And if you have thousands of people latching onto something, there's something there. It isn't inherently just wrong necessarily. I know there's examples where you could point to something there, but like, he's not trying. Um, X-Men Red. The more this book goes on, the more I think this is a very kind of skippable book. There's a lot of gobbledygook that's happening on Mars, and what's it going to really affect? Nothing. Um, Exterminators. This is Leah Williams' book, and I had to look up what else she's done. She's done a lot of the X universe stuff since this era kind of took off, and it's in the vein of this kind of like crude ladies' night out thing that's become more of kind of a um, cliche to fill. I don't know. This first issue didn't grab me. I'm more curious to see where it goes with the second. She's written some decent stuff. It's sometimes a bit of a burn. There's some stuff in there that isn't for me that I don't particularly like, but at this point, I'm getting all the X books, so we'll see how it goes. All right. Next up is Superman Space Age. It's a lot of order. But that matters. This has been excellent. I'm really curious to see where the third book lands this right now, because if the third issue manages to close out even a little stronger than the first two issues leading in, this is going to be the new great Superman book everyone needs to read. At this point, how far it can fly really depends on where it ends. I mean, if you're just looking for a decent book, go pick those up, no question. But it might be a, upcoming classic, as you will. Once in Future is winding down. I'm kind of glad for it because it was getting a little same. Hopefully it goes out with a bang. So we're building to it. Here's one. Pink Lemonade. I'm betting this is new by a lot of you. Ken Getty is someone who I've kind of known tangentially through all the comic stuff that we do. And this design is crazy, but just know this is a helmet that comes off. It's like this crazy abstraction, but they're able to draw pretty decent, like regular comic stuff too. And this is an interesting play with like kind of the innocence of like cartoons and comics and where it all came from versus the harder edge stuff that's kind of taken over, and kind of making a play for it being lighter but maybe with more of an adult look at it in a way. It's a very odd book. I'm curious to see where it goes because this will be a mini. Maybe this mini will launch into something bigger. I'm sure they're kind of taking baby steps because these are relatively unknown creators, a completely unknown property. It's what is it? It's Oni Press. It's an interesting book. The first issue really grabbed me. It's something different and captivating, and I was there the entire book. It's worth the first issue. I'm thinking it's going somewhere and should be fun. Radiant Black is interesting. Again, the split of superhero and kind of like slice of life stuff. I think it works, but once you start getting to like the Dead Lucky Now, and then there's like other books as well, I'm kind of falling off this being so big. I'm kind of hoping that this dies down a bit because I think they need to focus on stories that they want to tell rather than expanding this out to be like 4 books a month. It's a little too samey, even if it feels different because it's different cultures, right? But it's misery in life informed by some exciting event, move through some super heroics, conclusion with kind of a bittersweet ending. Like, I know that's kind of broad, right? But it's every one of these. And so, with that through line, the details kind of paint themselves in after the first issue. And so, it's kind of rote. Donny Cates, Ryan Segment Vanish. Uh, this is a weird mishmash of ideas with like magic and super heroics and whatnot. It's playing off of so much, but it's so much that this becomes something new, at least at this first blush. Um, it's a total try hard, like kind of in the vein of 90s comics sort of stuff. I don't know. It was fun. I'll be following it for a while, but if it drops off, I'll let myself let go of that book. Um, True Kelv took a turn more towards this weird demon-esque occult stuff in this issue, and I'm going to finish the mini at this point only because by the time I got through this and kind of thought about it a little more, I was like, I could drop this. I realized I only have one more issue to order to finish the mini, so I'd rather finish it than have 4 out of 5 books. But mm, mindset's very interesting. This is playing with the art form and some interesting ideas. I think it's worth checking out if you like things that are off the rocker. Here we go. I tried this Robin #1. I'm gonna end up getting a couple issues, but I'm dropping this immediately. Not for me. The art style kind of sucks. The writing's very schmaltzy. It's very dry. There's nothing special to me in this book. In fact, there's a lot that's subpar. I don't know why I keep trying some of these Bat books, but I want to like some of them, but I don't. I, and then Duo, this is pushing to a conclusion, but this idea of facing like the idea of making the populace immortal and then recoiling at it. And in this book, we're exploring an idea of immortals fighting, which again is really funny compared to this X-Men event happening. So much more of the ideas and the conflict is happening with unestablished characters in a 6 issue mini, and it's stronger for it. It's a really interesting comparison point, which I think is part of the reason why looking at this and what Gillian's doing is just kind of hard to swallow when I'm looking at Pack over here doing this book and clearly parallel thought or something, but it's better because it's cleaner. That's the main thing. So, yeah. All right, next up is this Wonder Woman issue, which I got because Layla Del Duco's doing art. That was the best thing about it. Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths is what I was talking about with those X-Men books. It's things happening with characters in a void, and I'm really struggling to follow this. Um, it's a mess. This is this is not a good story. These are not good comics. These are not good characterizations. There's no reason for me to continue to get this. I'm locked in. I just ordered the last issue because at this point, again, I'd rather have the mini. I think at this point, I think because I want to hopefully sell it, it's going to be a lot easier to sell if I just have it. But it's bad. Like I want it is hard because I know that there's creative talent. There's a lot of books I'm not trying at DC because I don't want to get sucked into too much. I think that's a big thing that's hurting DC right now. Not to get to the state of DC and Marvel and all that again and again, but I mean, I buy a ton of Marvel and I'm trying to buy less, but I keep getting sucked in because they're books I think I'll like. Um, Or in this case, there's so many runs I don't want to break at this point, which is my fault. I get it, but yeah. DC though, I'm that way with Green Lantern. There's no Green Lantern coming out. I'd like to be that way with Green Arrow. There's no Green Arrow coming out. Uh, there's a lot of things where if you buy one book, it feels like you have to buy five. And half of their output seems to be Gotham related. And it's just like if you like one thing, that can be okay, but it doesn't feel like you can just pick up a Superman book a month. You know, it doesn't feel like you can just pick up a Batman book a month. It just doesn't feel like there's entry points anymore. Either you're all in or it's impenetrable anymore. And that's rough. A lot of DC that I used to read was kind of the fringe stuff, but it was all the stuff I loved. Rebels, Secret Six, Birds of Prey. Yeah, I mean, some Green Arrow, Green Lantern stuff, but then not diving too much further. I didn't feel like I needed to buy Red Lanterns, and now I kind of wish I had because it's harder to get those issues. But if you see what I'm saying, like, let the comics be comics. Don't make them these monoliths. Um, yeah. Next, this Fantastic Four by Papose. I looked this guy up. He's done a few issues here and there, and he's done a couple of indie minis that apparently are really strong that I kind of want to check out now. But this is the first I'd read of this writer. Um, Cabal looks like a kind of the equivalent of like a standard house style Marvelous. Now, I mean, I know there isn't really a house style, but it's pretty stock standard superhero stuff. Not well done, some cool angles, some cool spins on what is a lot of dialogue. Like a really good job. But the writer here was picking up after Slot's run and is wedged for I think a few issues between after Slot's mega blowout with stuff that he'd been building to since his She-Hulk run before he did Spider-Man. And then there's this, and it kind of has to tie into Judgment Day. And then in a few issues, there's going to be someone else taking over. And so these are just filler issues that he's assigned to do. And yet this was great. I think if you're a writer coming in with that little cachet and that weird of an assignment and you're able to pull it out, you got something going on. I think the creators on this book are worth keeping your eye on. That's a high wire act. So yeah, I'm excited for the next one, and I'm also excited for the relaunch and all that. Don't get me wrong, but that won me over. The variants, tying Jessica Jones. There's a little She-Hulk. Clearly, I'm sure it was timed with the show and whatnot. But I like this story. It's fun. It's Gail Simone back at Marvel. I like her work at Marvel. I like her work elsewhere sometimes, but a lot of her third party publisher stuff that she does just hasn't grabbed me as much. Red Sonja doesn't grab me as much. Things of that nature. So I'm really curious to see where she goes next. God, even what was it? Not Welcome to Tranquility, though kind of that, but some of the other ones just didn't. Leaving Megalopolis. Not as strong as kind of the stuff she does here. I don't know what it is, but she plays better with some of those guardrails, I guess. Zub, who's on Spider-Man, started this Thunderbolts run coming out of the Devil's Reign Luke Cage mini that I wasn't able to find anywhere when it was coming out. Now I'm going to have to go backtrack those issues because they seem hugely important. But this was fun. It makes me want to go read all the Thunderbolts comics I bought and haven't read yet, which is a lot of things right now. New Fantastic Four. This mini's coming to an end with a little like last hurrah for Peter David. I've seen kind of a number of these where it's like Peter David or J.M. DeMatteis or other creators that were big in the 90s, kind of my heyday, coming back to do these stories that were during the height of their runs with different things. I know Peter David did another one for Hulk that I want to check out because I've never read his Hulk and whatnot. Jim is going to do a Craven mini that is coming out soonish. It's this weird thing Marvel's doing. It's also an X-Men with X-Men Legends. It's a little more codified there, but like X creators coming back to do stories within the heyday of like Larry Hama doing Wolverine or Peter David doing X Factor, whatever it is. Um, it's this interesting thing Marvel's doing, playing on nostalgia in a new way, but I don't hate it. These are just stories set at different points of continuity. And honestly, like if someone has a good pitch and they weren't that creative or whatever, I mean, I guess there's less of a hook from a sales angle, but like if it's a good story and they think it'll work, I'd say go for that. Um, 007. I was trying this. I remembered Bond movies are windy and hard to follow from moment to moment. Even when I'm watching a movie, trying to follow a monthly comic is going to be impossible for me. I'm dropping this. I don't think it's wrong. I think if you're a big kind of Bond or espionage fan, these are probably worth checking out. Um, just not my speed. Doesn't mean they're bad. Um, Turtles is jumping into the Armageddon game. This is really interesting. I took it to a couple creators that, especially with this, the Turtles have always kind of had a B book, right? Like there's Ninja Turtles one, whatever, whatever issue they're on. There's a B book that would be like Janeka's mini or Leonardo's mini, or like they were like one offs with other characters on the side. There were side stories that sometimes would inform things coming to the main series later, as there's obviously a lot of characterization. Um, I read it all, so it's hard for me to parse how impossible that would be to read the main series without reading the side stuff, which I think is a fair concern. But also, if you go buy the collections that IDW puts together most of the time, the big hardbacks, it's all in there. They're kind of treating this as one go. Um, the Armageddon game, they're playing a bit different than what they normally do, where this is all one big friggin' story. And I said to him basically, like, look, I'm excited for the issues. I'm going to get everything. My nitpick is this: Turtles 132, fine. Make this Turtles 133. Make it a bigger issue, whatever. But the separation of it makes it like this Marvel or DC event. I hate it. Why? Because it's just the split up book. There's not different characters per se that you're going to follow, like Spider-Man or the X-Men or whatever. You're not doing that. If you're buying this, likelihood is you're buying this. Um, it's one story. Let us follow it, please. Don't make it hard for me to search through the back issues. At this point, I'm just going to get the hardcovers anyways and read them. I love my Turtles run, but I don't know. That's my nitpick. I'd be curious if any of you had any thoughts on that. Yeah. The commodification of comics is a little annoying. They've always been commodities, I get it, but I mean, on this level, it's gross, especially when they're $6 a pop, not a quarter. You know, um, Edge of Spider-Man is building up with some side stuff. Lots of fun takes, I guess, but ultimately it really makes me question what it means. Because I mean, outside of like a power set, there's nothing really connecting these. So there's some hubbub online about this because it was a disabled character. I guess if you're going to be upset about that, eat a dick. I don't know. And then I was wrong last time. Ahmed is winding down with the last story for Miles Morales, and someone else will be taking over. So happy that's happening. I'm excited and really hope the next run's going to be great, but I can't tell you how much more potent it is that Ahmed is kind of getting to wrap up some other things and do a little bit more in a few issues. I really think the run as a whole is going to be stronger for this, especially because the last one was so high concept and so kind of out there that this leaves us in a better place. Though the new run will be starting with the new villain, so people are like, oh, and it's like, of course there's going to be a new villain. Come on, guys, that's how this works. Iron Cat, one of the strongest books Marvel's putting out. Really fun kind of heist thing. It's Black Cat and Iron Man, which feels like an unlikely pairing. The fact that they can do unlikely pairings at Marvel anymore is kind of crazy when you think about it, because it's so incestuous now that that kind of crossover punch I feel like is mostly gone. Yeah. Moon Knight, uh, Black, White, and Red, my last Moon Knight book for a while, was actually really fun. There's some cool stuff in here. There you go. Damage Control was a miss with the comedy, I guess. Again, basically have it ordered, so c'est la vie. Amazing Fantasy 15. I already did a video on this book. It's absolutely worth it. I know this is a big price point book, but if you're looking for kind of an old school Spider-Man thing, or if you want a little bit of Spider-Man without having to dive into whatever nonsense and events and all that, and you're gonna get like one Spider-Man book this year or whatever, right? This is it. Um, oh, these are sitting around from a while ago. I would skip that many. Alice Ever After is a weird concept to me. I think it's a fun, like, small story. This didn't need to be a comic, though. There's nothing in here that lended itself to be a comic. And when you're dealing with Alice in Wonderland, that's a weird place to land. Spider Punk. This is trash. Don't buy this. I don't want to dive into it. It's just I have before. Yeah, you guys have heard it. Yeah. This was painful after all the buildup of the 299 stuff to really realize, oh, it's Norman Osborn's the big bad and the goblin, and we're gonna do this, and it's just lazy. This is just lazy. There's so many cool things you can do with Spider-Man 2099 and 2099 in general, and this shit the bed with basically all of it. Um, this mini is so bad. If you were a fan of any of the other 2099 stuff, I would say avoid it so that you're not mad on the behalf of what creators have done before with the line. It's rough. Deadpool Bad Blood is Liefeld coming back to do some Deadpool. It's not great. I don't know. I knew what I was getting into. I can't. I don't know. Daredevil 3. This is Zdarsky's second chunk of Daredevil. I don't. It's weird to me when you have the same principal creators, but they continue with a new volume at Marvel. That defeats the point. Numbers aside, fun book. I like this new hand angle. It's something new for Daredevil. We're going away from the lawyer stuff that I like, but so we're not there for a while. It's fine. It'll come back. And curious to see where this goes. I think it'll be a fresh take with a character that probably needs something a little new. This Gambit mini is a playback. This is Claremont kind of doing like the new Fantastic Four thing Peter David was. Totally worthwhile checking out. The best Gambit solo book to ever be, which is a low bar, but I think it's worth mentioning. It's worth reading. It's a Gambit solo that's worth reading. That's never happened before. And then ASM got a second print of this issue because I had a misprint. And then this felt like a waste of a comic. This is like half retelling stuff from the X-Men Gala stuff and then kind of continuing forward. Kind of jank. I really want to see Wells when he's able to tell just Spider-Man stories again, which is going to be a while because we have to wrap this up. And then there's Dark Web. And then I think we finally get a chance to get a second arc out of him that's just comics. Though it will be in the light of being one of two main books, as Dan Slott will be coming back, and that's a weird position to be in because I think normally with the Spider-Man B, well, I do know 90% of the time when you have Spider-Man B books, it's rare that there's a larger creator on a secondary book than there is on Amazing. And given where things are at now, where there's only two Spider books and Amazing is here, and then there's the Dan Slott book, though Dan Slott's more divisive now. I'm curious to see if that informs some things a little differently, because there was a couple small periods where Amazing felt like the secondary Spider-Man book. Didn't happen often. It was mostly when James DeMatteis was on Spectacular, though. And it could be an interesting little moment, but as long as good stories are coming out, I'm all for it. So there you go. Peace. Keep reading.